It is once again Friday. I have got to stop waiting until the end of the week to make these videos because I have less energy, I waste long periods of time messing around making overwrought title sequences, and to top it all off, I am out of seaweed flavored Pringles. And speaking of weird foods, isn't it just my luck that right after I leave the country they release the craziest Oreo flavor ever? Candy corn Oreos. Oh my god, how is it that I can live without having access to this? Birthday cake flavored Oreos. You are no consolation. Anyway, I really appreciated your video from last week because of history and stuff. What? I like knowledge. I don't have to explain myself to you. And it just happened to tie in with a lot of stuff that I was reading or watching on the internet that week. Like the Terry Eagleton article that somebody linked to on Facebook, or the Crash Course video about communism and capitalism. Anytime somebody starts talking about labor and economics and those sorts of things, my mind immediately has to jump to technology and the future. And one of the things that I suppose makes me strange is I can't wait for the economy as we know it to be completely destroyed. Now, don't get me wrong, you know me, I'm not one of those people who's like waiting for some sort of apocalypse to happen. With fire and brimstone coming down from the sky, rivers and seas boiling, 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes, the dead rising from the grave, human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. No. What I'm waiting for is for technology to completely rewrite the book of how we interact with each other and the world. I suppose the best example I could use for what I'm talking about would be Star Trek. One of the things that I've always found interesting about Star Trek is it basically takes place in a world post-economic apocalypse. I mean, think about it. They don't use money. They have machines that can give you whatever you need. You just ask for it. You don't give it anything except the physical materials that it needs to make whatever it is you asked for. And I think the coolest thing in the world is the fact that we have basic versions of that kind of machine now. 3D printers, specifically 3D printers that can make the parts to make more of itself. Not to mention 3D printers are already being used to make all sorts of crazy stuff. Not just more 3D printers, though that is extremely cool, but there are also plans for making printers that can print medicine, and there's at least one guy who's already printed working guns. But anyway, I'm getting a little off the rails here. So in Star Trek, the people that we see in the show are just on the spaceship. They're not paid to be there. They're doing that. Why are they doing that? They're just going out into space. Because it is awesome. Starfleet's not really a job. They're on the spaceship, going around space. Woo! What was I talking about? Anytime I'm watching the news and I hear people talking about, various atrocious job numbers, I'm always a little curious about, what are acceptable employment numbers, and can we ever really reach them again? I mean, the human race is constantly making more of itself, and yet the amount of things that people need to actually, physically do is shrinking, rapidly. We have machines that make everything easier. That's why so few people are farmers now, because we have machines that make making lots of food easy. Granted, you still have to deal with droughts and other problems, but the machines are awesome. And manufacturing is pretty heavily mechanized. I mean, the better machines that we make, the less people will have to do, and yet there keep being more people. So to me, it feels like we're heading for some sort of tipping point where we're just gonna have to own up to the fact that, yeah, there isn't enough for everybody to do by a long shot. The real problem here is that this tipping point feels like it's gonna come quite a ways before we get our replicator 3D printing technology refined to the point where it can produce, food and shelter and medicine and all those other things that we would traditionally probably have to pay for. And honestly, I'm not really sure if this is even moving in the direction of a question. It's just something that pops into my head whenever people start talking about work and economics. Economic systems, like lots of things, aren't really naturally occurring. Human beings made those up. And even ones that we've been using for a long time and might be, fairly sturdy, aren't necessarily built to last, because they weren't really built at all. They're just what we started doing at the time because I needed clothes and you needed food, and you had clothes and I had food, and so we traded, and then people started making more efficient ways of producing those things, and so then we had to make money and all that, watch smarter people talk about that kind of stuff, like Crash Course or read a book or something, because I'm no expert. So I don't know, it just leaves me wondering, what kind of world will be built once you don't have to do things to stay alive? I would like to be optimistic. I mean, I look at the Star Trek example and see that, well, people are deciding to go out and explore and see what exists out there. And, I mean, that's just on a spaceship. I'm sure back on Earth, people are doing all sorts of stuff, scientific research and artistic expression. I wonder what the arts are like in the Star Trek future. They don't really seem to go into that very much. I guess at the end of the day, against all odds, I am optimistic about at least one thing. That someday, all our efforts in science and technology will eventually free the entirety of humanity to not just live to survive, but to explore the world and the universe and to express themselves in whatever way makes them the most fulfilled. And I don't know when that's going to be, because this thing doesn't actually tell time. It's really hit or miss. Nor do I even really know if it will be, but I hope so. Anyway, that's pretty much all my rambling for this evening. I'll try and collect my thoughts and reboot my schedule with a video update on Monday. So, with that in mind, I will see you in the future.